Ladies and gentlemen, the Atheist Experience is a review of the popular skeptic show on YouTube and cable TV locally in the Texas area, Houston. That is a review of the Atheist Experience. Did that make sense? That's what we do. We review the Atheist Experience and give Christian commentary on it from a presuppositional apologetic perspective. It's been going really well. It's so easy to look at atheist arguments. If you follow them, if you track them, you'll find that there's no consistency. And here's an example of an episode of a segment of a recent episode where somebody who's not a stranger to the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network, Josh, is the realistic nihilist. He's somebody who's debated Matt Slick, Seitan Bruggencate, other Christian apologists, including Dustin Seegers, and gentlemen from the Council of Google Plus for years right here on the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network YouTube channel. He's been here scores of times, literally. Well, he argues for sport, apparently. He called the Atheist Experience posing as a theist to point out the errors of Matt Dillahunty. What he did is he heard Matt Dillahunty make some truth claims, and then he called and took him to task. And at first, myself and my co-host, Len Pettis of Grappling with Theology, didn't realize who he was, but our listeners, our viewers, informed us, and then we realized who it was that was challenging Matt Dillahunty. So this is one segment of the Atheist Experience, which is a ministry of the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network. Go to BibleThumpingWingnut.com to see all that we're about. But this is one segment of a show that we do every week, reviewing the Atheist Experience. Enjoy. Oh, there's a Derek in Nevada. Did we get to Derek in Nevada?
I don't remember a Derek in Nevada.
We'll cover one more phone call.
All right, let's see where this goes.
All right. Turn the volume up.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm a theist, but I mean, I think throughout listening to you and the procession of the call, I think that there were a few things that you said were wrong,
Cool.
even by your own account. And then I have an argument that I kind of want to get to.
Okay. What was I wrong about?
Okay, so the first thing you said is, I wrote it down because I thought it was a bizarre thing to say. It said, you can't point to an actual theist who's called this show with a reasonable evidence-based argument for the existence of God.
Correct.
If you can, it would be the one and only argument that would keep coming up. It would win the Templeton Prize, the Nobel Prize.
I think it would win those prizes, but I was probably a little hyperbolic in saying it was the only argument that would come up. But yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I just think that just strikes me as an argumentum ad populum. You know, like, I mean, why couldn't it be the case that there could be an argument that is good that you don't understand is good, and that in fact no one understands is good, or in fact some people understand it's good, but when they try to convince people, the people who are giving out prizes don't understand it. I don't understand the reasoning there.
Yeah, it's not an argument ad populum because I'm not saying that
all the best arguments don't get the prizes, Matt. Hello. I like that.
Truth of this is based on
Glenn. You look like you were going to say something.
No, I'm not.
Any sort of popularity of this. It was demonstrably sound in the way of all the other things. We wouldn't be having these debates for thousands of years. Your view that perhaps there's an argument that is truly sound that people just aren't aware that they're sound is...
By that standard, no one would be arguing that the earth is flat today, Matt. If there was an argument that convinced everybody, Matt, we wouldn't have flat earthers walking around right now. So no one can prove anything by that standard.
self-refuting because soundness is about recognition.
Well, one thing that, no, well, that's not true, actually. So soundness is a property of arguments such that if the...
Matt's getting his, I'm going to hang up on you.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking too. Like he's going to hang up on this.
All right, now this guy's challenging me again.
If the argument is in valid logical form and the premises are true, then the conclusion,
so
the argument is...
You're confusing it a little bit. Validity is about the structure of the argument such that true premises lead to true conclusions. And if that is the case for the structure of the structure of the syllogism, it's valid. Soundness addresses whether or not the premises are actually true and or accepted. Because the point is, in argumentation, if you accept the sky is blue, whether it's blue or not, if you accept that premise and the structure is valid and you accept the second premise, you must either accept the conclusion or you are in violation of logical reason.
Well, that's a weird way to define soundness because...
That's actually the definition of soundness.
Well, let me explain. I gave the definition of soundness is that the premises are true, and then Matt Dillahunty gave the definition of soundness that people accept the premises, but that means that there are all sorts of sound arguments, right? Because there are people who accept.
I'm talking about two different. Derek, I'm talking about two different things. Yes, soundness is about whether or not the premises are true. But as I said, in argumentation, if there is someone who is convinced that a premise is true, convinced that both premises in a syllogism are true, and they want to reject the conclusion, if the structure is valid, they are now in violation of sound reasoning. That's what I said.
Right. So I agree that that's irrational. But what I'm saying is that you can't, when you said it was sound, you were saying that if there was a sound argument, then something like everyone would accept it or something along those lines, right? And I'm saying that that's not true.
No.
You have an argument that's logically valid, that's...
I'm talking about whether or not it's demonstrably sound. Not so you could start with premise one. There's a diamond the size of my fist hidden under a rock on Mars. That can be true, and we'll never have access, or it's unlikely we would ever have access to be able to demonstrate that it's true. But if somebody was convinced that that was the case, that would be a different issue.
Well, so demonstrably sound, you're just saying that they can demonstrate the truth of the premises. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, so the premises themselves are the demonstration of the conclusion, right? And then you have layers upon layers. I mean, you're gonna go on. I mean, obviously, the infinite skeptic can just keep going on, and then you're never going to have any sound arguments. So, because you're not going to be able to demonstrate.
Sure, but that's not a skeptic, and it's a slur to phrase it that way. That's not what skepticism is. But yes, somebody that is flatly going to deny things and get right down to questioning the fabric of reality, yes, they can deny premises until the cows come home.
Like the Dillahunty Dodge. Like the person, I appreciate John Wilkinson's been in the chat today quite a bit. Like the person who caused John Wilkinson's head to pop off when he questioned whether babies exist, because he was asked a moral question in regards to treatment of babies. Then the atheist got frustrated and said, well, I'm not sure babies exist. You go past skepticism, you become the Dillahunty Dodge.
Whether there are cows or not.
Whether they're cows or not.
Maybe this rephrasing will help. I am not aware of any argument that's ever been presented on the show for the existence of a God that is both valid in structure and has demonstrably sound premises.
Right. And so, again, I'm just trying to figure out, like, take the evolutionary argument against naturalism, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, I presume that you're a naturalist. I don't know if you're agnostic about that or not.
I'm not a philosophical naturalist. I'm a methodological naturalist.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Stop. I don't know if I've ever heard him take a position on a worldview before. So he said he is a methodological naturalist, Tim? Can you hear me?
I'm going to rewind it.
naturalism, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, I presume that you're a naturalist. I don't know if you're agnostic about that or not.
I'm not a philosophical naturalist. I'm a methodological naturalist.
Okay, pause the tape.
Um,
Because now we can have something that we can nail down Matt Dillahunty on. Methodological naturalism is a strategy for studying the world by which scientists choose not to consider supernatural causes even as a remote possibility.
So it's already assumed.
His position.
So he's sitting here all day long asking for evidence for the supernatural, and he's already rejected it.
And you won't even consider it as even a remote possibility. This is from conservapedia.com. That's also okay. Rational Wiki says methodological naturalism is the label for a required assumption of philosophical naturalism when working within the scientific method. Methodological naturalism limits their scientific research to the study of natural causes because any to attempt. Okay, hold on. I have to expand this. Methodological limit their scientific research to the study of natural causes because any attempts to define causal relationships with the supernatural are never fruitful and result in the creation of scientific dead ends and God of the gap type hypotheses. To avoid these traps, scientists assume that all causes are empirical and naturalistic, which means they can be measured, quantified, and studied methodologically. So, right, he automatically
rejects any claim.
Right. So he's playing a little game here because he asked if he's a naturalist, and he said, "Well, actually, so he's a naturalist." All right. I don't know if he wants to try to avoid.
What is a philosophical naturalist? Look that up, because he said he's not a philosophical naturalist. As you look it up, I will replay him saying it again.
This rephrasing will help. I am not aware of any argument that's ever been presented on the show for the existence of a God that is both valid in structure and has demonstrably sound premises.
right. And so, again, I'm just trying to figure out, like, take the evolutionary argument against naturalism, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, I presume that you're a naturalist. I don't know if you're agnostic about that or not.
I'm not a philosophical naturalist. I'm a methodological naturalist.
That wasn't the question the guy asked, but I guess it's good to be more specific. What is a philosophical naturalist?
It's the idea or belief that only natural, as opposed to supernatural or spiritual laws and forces operate the world. So basically, everything can be explained through nature. Philosophical naturalism is the doctrine that the natural world is all there is. In other words, that the supernatural is definitionally impossible, since whatever is shown to exist via affecting the natural world is clearly part of the same natural world.
So what is the difference?
Well, there isn't one.
Read the first sentence of methodological.
Let me go back. Give me a moment.
Because it seemed to be very close to that.
Methodological naturalism is the label for the required assumption of philosophical naturalism. Okay, so it's the same thing. It literally says, okay, so methodological naturalism is the label for the required assumption of philosophical naturalism when working with the scientific method. Methodological naturalists limit their scientific research to the study of natural causes because any attempt to define causal relationships with the supernatural are never fruitful and result in the creation of scientific dead ends and God of the gap type hypotheses. To avoid these traps, scientists assume that all causes are empirical and naturalistic, which means they can be measured, quantified, and studied methodologically. Think about this, Tim.
The two go hand in hand. How can he be one? How can he be one and not the other?
Between the two. So here's the problem. Using naturalistic methods demonstrate logic. Go to the cupboard and get me 2 cups of logic, please.
Or morality.
Think of Tim. What the scientific method itself. All right. Why under a naturalistic worldview, for it to work, you have to just simply assume all of the laws of nature. You can't truly prove them. You have to assume them. There's a real problem with this. And Gordon Clark, I'm going to look it up. Gordon Clark wrote an excellent refutation of naturalism that I'm going to find. We can continue playing this if you want, and I'll see if I can find this, because he says it much more concisely than I can.
Okay. So methodological naturalism, as I understand it, is that we're not going to incorporate any intentional explanations into our scientific framework. Is that the idea?
It is the recognition that because we cannot demonstrate non-natural causation, that we don't get to appeal to it.
Well, I mean, I guess this is sort of tangential, but like, take something like, you said that there would be someone winning Templeton prizes. I mean, do you think that there are no good, one thing is that Alvin Plantinga in 2017 won the Templeton Prize, right? But I mean, I don't know if you think that that's evidence for theism or something like that.
No.
I obviously don't think it's evidence for theism, but it just seems like that's evidence that his arguments for theism are good or demonstrably sound.
No, I probably shouldn't have referenced the Templeton Prize, because the fact that they think it's the case doesn't mean it's the case. In a sense, what I was essentially saying is, if there was,
he just nailed him, because the callers. I'm pretty sure he just nailed him, based on how this conversation's going with that. He was calling in to take issue with Dillahunty's argument for that. Hey, if there was a good argument, the prize would be won. And then he pointed out that there was a prize won, and he's like, "Oh well, I shouldn't have said that." Somebody's taking him past pretty good.
Standard. Oh.
Len,
I didn't hear it because I was Googling, so I'll have to listen back on the podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
Was a recognizable, valid and sound argument for the existence of God, we wouldn't keep having these discussions and debates, and it'd be front page news, it'd be, Nobel worthy, etc., that somebody had essentially demonstrated the truth of that a God exists.
Do you have a valid and sound argument?
I want, hold on a sec. I want justification for that claim.
This caller's good. He's actually
going to hang up on him pretty quick now. He's starting to get it.
I got to stop Googling and listen. So
yeah,
can back it up just a little bit.
I will.
Matt, I looked up and I saw Matt's posture and countenance. No, he bet. So let's back it up a little bit so I can catch this.
All right. Remember, the caller called in, right? And he said that you said that if there was ever a good argument for God, then it would the matter would be settled. Everyone would use the same argument, and the guy would get a certain prize.
Because we cannot demonstrate non-natural causation, that we don't get to appeal to it.
Well, I mean, I guess this is sort of tangential, but like, take something like, you said that there would be someone winning Templeton prizes. I mean, do you think that there are no good, one thing is that Alvin Plantinga in 2017 won the Templeton Prize, right? But I mean, I don't know if you think that that's evidence for theism or something like that.
No.
I obviously don't think it's evidence for theism, but it just seems like that's evidence that his arguments for theism are good or demonstrably sound.
No, I probably shouldn't have referenced the Templeton Prize, because the fact that they think it's the case doesn't mean it's the case. In a sense, what I was essentially saying is, if there was a recognizable, valid and sound argument for the existence of God, we wouldn't keep having these discussions and debates, and it'd be front page news, it'd be, you know, Nobel worthy, et cetera, that somebody had essentially demonstrated the truth of that a God exists.
Do you have a valid and sound argument?
I want, hold on a sec. I want justification for that claim. If there were a valid and sound argument, we would expect it in the newspapers, well, all that stuff.
I would just
justification.
I would just like a valid and sound argument here.
Yeah, I'd love for somebody to actually present an argument rather than tiptoeing around all this other stuff. But I don't know what to tell you, Derek. If you think that somebody could actually come up with a proper, valid and sound argument for the existence of God, and this would not hit the news, I don't know what to tell you.
The caller is excellent because he watched the show. He saw a point where Matt made a truth claim, and he's holding it to him. He's holding him to it. He's backed off on 2 points so far, and now all he wants to do is, hey, prove something else. Prove something else.
Dodge, dodge, dodge.
He's been nailed a couple times.
Yeah, this is good stuff.
Well, so you just believe that claim, right?
Yes, I am convinced that if somebody could prove there was a God, we would hear about it in the news and from organizations that are intent on doing this. I think that the motivations of people, countless theists surrounding the globe, if they finally could present a valid and sound argument for the existence of their God, I think we would hear about that. And instead, instead of hearing that argument, what we hear are countless other arguments that have been trotted out over years that don't do the case. You got Bill Craig doing the Kalam cosmological argument, which doesn't have God in any premise or the conclusion.
The caller didn't call to make an argument for God. The caller called to call you out on your claim.
Mm-hmm.
Control room.
Has anyone ever asked Matt what evidence that he would accept in any of the debates that you know of?
Yeah. Who was it? Cy? Was it Cy that asked him that? Or was it who asked him that?
I don't remember, but remember his position as a methodological naturalist. As a methodological naturalist, he automatically dismisses the supernatural. So there is no evidence admissible in the courtroom of his mind in any practical sense. So him even asking for evidence, he isn't going to accept anything. Just show me evidence. Just show me evidence. Matt, you're a methodological naturalist. And by the definition on Rational Wiki, it says that it says right here, the study of I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this word for word, but basically he's forced to dismiss the supernatural because they're question begging, they're unfruitful, and this from the article result in the creation of scientific dead ends. So
could that even be science, though? Because you can't rule things out in science, really. You can't just say, oh, no, we just won't accept anything, even if it goes that way. That's not science.
Exactly.
You
nailed it, brother. You nailed it right there. That if you're going to dismiss any evidence, then or if you're going to dismiss the possibility of any supernatural conclusion, then of course anything that proves the supernatural is automatically inadmissible in the courtroom of your mind. So you're not doing science anymore. You're just giving your arbitrary, foolish opinion.
I'm responding to a comment, and I lost my train of thought. What I was going to say, because you guys are making good points. Let's go on. All right. Instead of trying to respond to the comment, I will say to Ecclesiastes in the comment feed on YouTube, who says that the caller is actually the realistic nihilist, Josh. I don't know that Josh is now a theist who's changed his name to Derek and lives in Nevada, or if he called claiming. Why do you think it's the realistic nihilist on this phone call? Put your answer in.
I saw that comment and I started listening real closely to the voice. That's not Josh. We've had enough conversations with him, both privately and publicly. I know his voice. That's not him.
I remember the thing that I forgot now. So, control room, John asked, yes. Has anybody asked Dillahunty what would it take to convince you? Matt's response to that has been repeatedly, I don't know, but God would know, so it's up to him to show me. That's his response.
Okay.
And that's being trotted out as if it's evidence for the existence or an argument for the existence of God. So why is it that the greatest apologists on the planet aren't actually using these arguments if in fact they exist? That is my thing. That's not an appeal to popularity. If in fact there were good arguments for God, why aren't the best apologists using them?
Well, they might be. You just might not accept them, and those good arguments might not be in the news. So
yes.
I'm just saying that the claim that you're...
This is the argumentum ad stubbornness or argumentum ad idiot.
Argument ad denial.
You made a claim that any good argument is going to be in the news or something like that, right?
Yes, that is what I'm convinced is likely the case.
That claim. Right, but why?
I mean, we regularly. How many times have we found Noah's Ark, and that's in the news?
All right, let me ask you a question. Do you think that
Len, it's the realistic nihilist posing as a theist, just for the sake? That's what they're saying in the comment thread, just for the sake of argumentation enjoyment.
That there are any good arguments for materialism?
I don't know how that's relevant, and I've already pointed out that I'm not a philosophical materialist.
Well, I'll explain how it's. I'm not predicating you with any position. I'll explain how it's relevant if you just like to answer the question.
I am not convinced. Here's the easy answer to your distraction. I am not convinced that there are sound arguments for hard materialism. That's why I'm not a materialist.
So do you think that there are no good arguments for moral realism?
What does that have to do with this?
Eddie argues like him too. It's definitely
the more they might be right.
Yeah, they're right.
Funny.
Yeah.
You think that's Josh?
That's Josh. Yeah,
that's funny.
So for those of you who are new to this engagement here, Josh, the realistic nihilist, debated Seitan Bruggencate on this YouTube channel
years ago. 4 years ago, probably 5 years.
And we knew him before that.
Yes.
We've talked to him for hours and hours upon hours, and so have the Google Plus guys. Nice guy, nice enough
He's
guy.
A good guy, and a heck of a guitarist.
But the thing that happened, unfortunately, to him is that he lost the debate with Cy within the first few minutes because he switched it. I hit the microphone. Sorry, microphone. Sorry, listeners. Because he switched his position right there. He's like, oh, well, I'm going to argue from this position now. Well, no, you can't do that. See you later. And I think we hung up on him. But then Cy was like, all right, bring him back. Let him argue his whatever, argued from a different position. So now here he is, calling the atheist experience, claiming to be a theist.
This is hilarious.
So
this is a guy. So, Josh has had enough experience with presuppositionalists, like much like you can play a really good atheist. he can play a pretty good theist, apparently.
He spent some of the greatest engagements didn't he engage with our Christian guy in the Carolinas, Dustin Seegers?
Yes.
Dustin talked to him for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, all I need to do to falsify his hypothesis is find something that he thinks there are good arguments for that is not published in the news, right? Because that's the criterion for falsification, presumably?
No.
No, and see, that seems to be backwards, because my point is that all the bad arguments are out there, and there are good arguments for things that are out there, but I'm unaware of any good arguments for things that aren't out there. And
Look,
given that there are a bunch
all
of
I'm trying to
people,
say-
given that there are a bunch of people who are constantly working on this and have a vested interest in convincing people, one would presume, not assert with certainty, that if in fact there was a valid and sound argument for the existence of God, we would be aware of it. If it exists among humans, we would be aware of it because somebody would share it, right? And it would be pointed out by apologists left and right. Here it is. Here's
His assumption is, Len, his assumption is if there was a good argument there, that people would accept it.
Yeah.
And what's his basis for saying that?
Right. And it's so weird because like debates happen all the time, politically and philosophically and religiously, and yet people who are proven wrong rarely change their minds or change their positions. So I mean, there's that whole thing. You know, he's not operating in reality here.
the one we've been looking for so that we don't have to trot out the Quran.
But what I'm saying, the reason I was drawing an analogy to something like materialism is because there may be valid and sound arguments for materialism. There may be valid and sound arguments for other metaphysical hypotheses. But the point is that just because that doesn't mean that people aren't going to disagree with them. In fact, it doesn't mean that.
I didn't say anything. I was not talking about whether or not people agree or disagree. I was talking about awareness.
Matt said that if there was a good argument, everyone who called his show would use the same argument. That's what he said.
This is such a facepalm moment.
And I would argue that if there is a logical, valid, and sound argument for something of any note, that if we're not aware of it, it doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, I'm saying there might be sound.
We should all call up the show and just say, God exists. You know, each and every one. There's a great argument right here.
Have caller after caller.
Yeah, caller after caller. We all using the same
arguments that exist now that I'm.
Sure.
So do you have one?
Do you have one?
Well, we could talk about that. As long as you're in agreement with me, then I think that what you said, you disagree with what you said previously in the show.
I'm saying, so is it possible that there's a sound argument that we're not aware of? Is that what you're getting to?
No, I'm saying that, well, maybe not you specifically, but one of the arguments that you've dealt with is sound and that you just are mistaken somewhere along the line.
Sure.
And in fact, a lot of people have that same confusion, and it's not at all likely that we would expect that everyone would be able to understand.
I didn't say everyone, but I'm not an idiot, and I've studied this for my entire life.
All right. Well, another thing I guess I wanted to talk about
is nothing.
Yeah. That's how Josh does it. All right. The next thing I want to talk about, and the next thing I want to talk about, he's a good guy.
Do you have an argument for the existence of God?
Well, I do.
Okay.
But I'm a bit confused about one thing that you said in regards to the call with the previous caller. So I think that you're using sort of an idiosyncratic definition of objective morality, because the way I understand it is that objective morality is what one ought to do, full stop. That is irrespective of the beliefs and desires and aims of agents.
And we argued with him about that for hours and hours.
You can say you taught him everything he knows. You helped with this phone call. You guys helped with this phone call.
This is the exact argument I had with him and Wittgensteinian like 4 years ago. This is almost the identical argument. I bet we can find that video on the channel.
You know, at least he's listening to you. You know, he's paying attention.
Well, what's sad here, dude? Here's the sad thing is that he just sees this as sport to tie up Matt Dillahunty in knots here.
And that's what he did.
He's not going to get the gospel here.
And that's what he did with us too.
Yeah.
It was for sport.
Right.
And,
exactly.
And
so,
here's the take. I'm sorry, Len. You haven't spoken up much, and I'm talking over you. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I'm just saying that you can win arguments with atheists. Even atheists pretending to be Christians can out-argue other atheists, smart atheists, deceptive atheists even. And the thing is that there's going to be no gospel here. This is all just sport, fun, and games. And let's remember, both the caller and the host, what their state is before God and what's going to happen to them if they die in that state. That's what we should not be laughing at here. Is it in our flesh kind of fun to watch Matt Dillahunty get owned when he's shown his own contradictions and folly? Yeah, it is. But let's try to keep the greater thing in mind here, that this guy outside of faith, he is going to hell.
And what I was going to say is, we used to sit in those Google Hangouts for hours, and Dustin Seeger sat in a hangout for 3 hours, just talking philosophy with Josh, who's posing as Derek from Nevada, Josh in Colorado. Sat there and engaged with him for hours. And, Dustin has talked to me about it. There's no use in doing it anymore, because and then last time Dustin Seegers debated Benjamin Duncan on this YouTube channel, it was more about the gospel. And after the debate, Dustin was like, I could go around in circles with him on philosophy, but what's the use? He needs the gospel. He doesn't need to be convinced. And a lot of apologists who know a lot of philosophy will just, for the sport, go round for round with a non-believer, rarely touching on the gospel.
Yeah.
But you seem to reject that notion, right? Like, I'm not sure because that's the way objective morality is sort of standardly used. And so you're using sort of an idiosyncratic definition. I just want to make sure by objective morality, you mean as long as the goal is X, one ought to do X. And that's
correct. As I said 35 times in the previous call, and over the many years that I've discussed this, I go into great detail that what I'm talking about is situational ethics. That what I'm talking about is once you have decided and agreed upon a goal, that there are objective assessments that can be made, or non-subjective assessments that can be made with respect to that goal. That's it.
Okay, so I just
what you seem to be doing is suggesting that that there's an objective moral reference that is in fact more akin to what I would call absolute morality, and I have strive for years to point out the difference between absolute morality and an objective moral system.
Well, I think that God is co-intentional with the good. And that, I guess that takes a lot of explaining, but I think so I think that the good, I actually believe in objective morality, and I think that the good is what one ought to do, full stop, but I'm a sort of constructivist in that I think that there's a way in which agents can be constructed such that there's a correct and incorrect way to perceive motivating properties. But that's all, it takes a long time to get into.
Yeah, and basically you said the same thing the last caller did, that God and good are co-equal.
Co-intentional.
Sure.
What I said. Right. So I can explain that view, but I just kind of wanted to I just want to make sure.
I can explain that view. I don't think that's his blue view.
Right.
That's interesting.
Right. insofar as the standard sort of definitions go, you're not a moral realist, right? You're a moral anti-realist.
What is your standard definition of moral realist? Because what I've said repeatedly is that the physical facts about reality are the foundation by which you determine whether or not your outcomes are consistent with well-being as a foundation. That's it.
The physical facts of reality are the foundation, which let me interpret him, because he admits that he cannot know what reality is. He admits that. So what he's saying when he says physical facts about reality are the foundation for blah, 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 what he's saying is, I have no foundation. That's what he's saying.
Yep.
Right, but what one ought to do, so like what I want to do is say, you don't think that your notion of morality is detached from what one should or shouldn't do you? Or is it completely detached from what one should or shouldn't do?
No, provided that we agree on well-being as a goal, there are things one should and shouldn't do.
And you could change the first sentence to anything. Change it to, we don't like this particular race. We all don't like this particular race. So we can decide what we should and shouldn't do. It's like void of meaning, what he's saying. There's like,
well, yeah, that's the thing. You're not talking about, you aren't defining well-being. If well-being means that there's no more Jews in our society, I mean, then
that's the goal. That was Hitler's goal. Get rid of the Jews. That's my goal. He was going for his goal. So does that make it moral?
Yeah, by his standard, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, but if someone has alternative goals, presumably they should do those too, right?
Yes. If you're playing chess and you have a goal of not winning, then there are things that you should do. But I prefer to play chess with the people who care about winning. And I prefer to live life with the people who care about living.
So it seems, so like what morality is then to you?
I don't care if it's morality. As I've said over and over again, including there in that call, I don't care if you call it morality or if anybody calls it morality. I'm talking about well-being. You either care about well-being or you don't. But what I would like to know from somebody who wants to say that well-being isn't morality, okay, what is there about morality that is true and useful that isn't encompassed by well-being? Because
he's redefining well-being.
Yeah.
He's totally redefined well-being.
Well, remember that he said well-being is the goal of morality, but morality is well-being. So what the heck is he even talking about?
I wish this would have been the first caller. This is a good, this is a good one.
Yeah, I usually don't go this long, but
yeah.
That yet.
Well, I think that what you're doing there is that you're taking an extension of morality, which is that it's well-being, and saying that it's reducible to the other, which is not true. I don't think. I mean, I don't even think that you would assent to that. It just happens to be that what's coextensive.
You just keep telling me what you think, and you won't say why. And the why is what I care about.
I'm just trying to. I'm sort of just.
You can say the same thing to him.
Yep.
You could say the same thing to Matt Dillahunty. Ugh, he's so frustrating. Sorry.
The official definition of well-being is void of any reference to morality.
Well, you chewed up a bunch of time here, and we've got 4 minutes left.
Yeah, we've spent a bunch of time getting me to repeat things.
Right, but I'm like I said, I'm just trying to get a good handle on your position, because you use a lot of idiosyncratic language, and I think that you not being careful with as much experience as you have is detrimental to your cause, right? Because it was like
you called because you're concerned about how detrimental I am to my cause.
That's so
I'm
sweet.
concerned about rationality. I'm concerned about rationality, and I think that if you're doing things that are detrimental to your cause, that's irrational.
If you and I agree that we want to win a game of chess, do you agree that we can derive ought moves and valuations of position with respect to that goal?
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah.
Well, so I think that
If you and I agree on well-being,
thoughts are reducible.
If you and I agree on well-being, do you not think that we can derive the same sort of right moves, wrong moves from that?
Yeah, I think that if well-being is a goal, then there are things that conduce to well-being and things that do not conduce to well-being.
So you and I are in agreement, and yet you're concerned that I'm not being rational or doing damage to my position.
Well, you keep calling it objective morality.
No. I have not.
Okay, so you don't.
I've spent years
he did.
correcting the people.
He is so talking about. Of course, he.
Wait, let's rewind it. Where you said objective morality. Yeah. Hello.
As long as we can agree that well-being is. Here's what we need to do. We need wingnut callers to call in next week and ask him to define well-being and give different scenarios. Well, what if I agree? What if you and I disagree on what well-being is? I think that would be great. And I think we should have a prize for any wingnut callers that get through. I don't know. Get a sticker or something. A smiley sticker.
Get a smiley sticker.
Like you, who have this view of objective morality, which I think is really probably better described as absolute. I've specifically said over and over, including this call, exactly what I'm talking about when I say that morality is objective, that there are non-subjective evaluations of consequences of actions with respect to a goal. And if you have some other usage of that, that's clearly not what I'm talking about.
Right. But that's when I asked you that your notion of morality is detached from what one ought do. And that's true.
No.
That's true because of what you said. Like you said
oh my
that
God.
morality
Goodbye.
Oh, what a coward. What a coward.
He was looking for a reason to hang up on him. He
was just about to show Matt where he was self-contradictory. He was, and Matt saw it coming because he was saying, "Hold on, now you said," and he's like, "Goodbye."
Yep.
Isn't that interesting?
Let's replay.
Well, you keep calling it objective morality.
No. I have not.
Okay, so you don't.
I've spent years correcting the people like you who have this view of objective morality, which I think is really probably better described as absolute. I've specifically said over and over, including this call, exactly what I'm talking about when I say that morality is objective, that there are non-subjective evaluations of consequences of actions with respect to a goal. And
what is non-subjective? Instead of calling them objective, he says non-subjective.
Yeah. I'm not a naturalist. I'm a, what did he call it? I don't even remember. I've deleted the Google.
Methodological naturalist.
I'm not a naturalist. I'm a methodological naturalist.
No, he was asked if he was a naturalist. He said, no, I'm not a philosophical naturalist. I'm a methodological naturalist, which we know are the same thing. Sounds pretty smart, Matt.
Yeah, sounds smart. Yeah, that's what
I don't know what definition, what dictionary he's going off of, but definitely not the one Len read from.
And if you have some other usage of that, that's clearly not what I'm talking about.
Right. But that's when I asked you that your notion of morality is detached from what one ought do. And that's true.
No.
That's true because of what you said. Like you said
oh my
that
God.
morality
Goodbye.
You said that when he started quoting him, that's it.
Yep.
Nah.
Can't have that.
See, now, could it be that let's go back to what his original point was. Could it be that you have heard arguments that you don't understand, or
Could be that you already know God exists and everything in the Bible, things of God are spiritually discerned.
that was the most frustrating.
I can say I can
been so simultaneously frustrated and entertained in my life.
No, I must admit I have hung up on Josh more than Matt has. I have booted Josh from Hangouts more, probably 10 times more
Right. But the thing is,
he's been in a lot of hangouts.
You know why? Because Josh does what Matt Dillahunty did. It's for the opposite reason, because you get Josh to start contradicting himself and he'll take on different positions, because Josh is a smart dude. He's studied a lot of philosophy. I've talked to him on the phone. We've had a lot of private conversations, and it's been probably 3 years, probably 2 or 3 years since I've had any real meaningful conversations with him. But I know that at one time he was like part of a philosophy club in his community that met regularly and read books and discussed ideas, which, by the way, I think is fantastic. I think that's a great idea. But because he is so educated on these issues, he'll just, I'm not going to say like he's tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine or anything like that, but because he knows all these different philosophical positions, he can argue all of them. So once it's like playing whack-a-mole with the guy.
Yeah.
Let's
see how
you knock down naturalism, he'll become an imperialist. An imperialist. You knock down imperialism, he'll become a moral nihilist. You knock down moral, and he'll just go down the list and just keep popping up different ones. So
that's right. His YouTube channel was the Realistic Nihilist, and that's the point that Cy ten Bruggencate refuted within seconds. You're a moral nihilist, right? And then he's like, well, for this debate, I'm going to be arguing from this position. And Cy said, okay, you're gone.
Yep.
But
right, because we want to actually argue with people who hold to a conviction.
Right.
Yeah. So hey, it would be fun to. Do you have that video? I wonder how quickly we could find the video of the Realistic Nihilist. Remember the first engagement we had with him?
We've got the one that Bible Thumping Wingnut is. That's somewhere, but I don't know what are you talking about? I want to hear what Matt says after he hangs up.
Okay, that's a different show.
We have like a minute left, and I'm not going to get to hear a valid and sound argument for God today.
It's just, so here's the thing. I talk a lot. I run around the world educating people about skepticism, about morality.
You run around the world in your hatred for God, making a really good living.
Morality, about atheism, about reason. And one of the things, I don't claim any expertise on anything. If there's anything I'm good at, it's taking complex topics and making them easy to understand, because that's what I do for me. The fact that I'm not using, in every case, the specific language that somebody else is using shouldn't be a problem if, when I'm talking a lot, I clearly say, here's what I'm saying and here's what I mean. If only thing I'd ever done is come in and say, I advocate for objective morality, bam, then you might have a point. But as I've been on here for years, a decade, offering monumental amounts of clarity with regard to what I'm saying, and you call to say, so let me see if I understand you. You have an idiosyncratic view of this that's blah, blah. Yeah, clearly it was clear enough for you to understand this. And then you pretend like, oh, well, I'm just worried that, about rationality and about whether or not you're hurting your cause. Bullshit.
No, he is worried about you doing that because he's an atheist, you dingbat. You've just been pwned by your own team.
Pwned.
You are not at all concerned about whether or not I'm hurting my cause. You are looking to either trap me in some sort of, Matt's a dilettante who's not particularly, hey, Matt's bald, has a gray beard, he's a dilettante who didn't take any philosophy classes, who's self-taught, and yet somehow or another, I still got you to call me.
And that's the big win. Anybody who calls, see that? Okay, look at this. So we win under
if we call him.
Under that argument, right, Len? All these people who tell us to call the show, we're winning by not calling.
Yeah, exactly.
We win. That's the third time at least tonight.
Yeah.
So
Amen.
This is a man whose ego is boosted every time somebody calls. So no one, if you disagree with him, you can't call him, because just by calling, he wins.
Right, right.
This has become the best show that we've ever done on this Atheist experience. It started out slow.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, I sent you a short clip from Greg Bonson on naturalism. Do you want to play it? It's like 2.5 minutes. Let's see what Bonson
If naturalism is true, that is, that all that exists is the natural order, and there isn't anything that goes beyond man's experience and time. If naturalism is true, then the naturalist has no reason to believe his naturalism. You write that down and I'll explain why it's true. If naturalism is true, the naturalist has no reason to believe it. Has no reason to believe it. Because you see, naturalism says all of our thinking is just electrical chemical responses. All of our thinking is subject to the laws of chemistry and physics, which is to say all of our thinking is determined by the factors in the physical world or in the physical brain in the environment around us. All of our thinking is, in principle, predictable then, because it's just following the laws of nature. Usually, more sophisticatedly put, the laws of physics and biology and chemistry and so forth. But the point is, human thinking is just the species of the physical world and its operation. Human thinking is just, it's on the same order, but not the same level of sophistication as weeds growing. And so if naturalism is true, then the person who's propounding it is propounding it why? Because his or her brain has required them by the laws of physics and chemistry and biology to say this sort of thing. It's not as though they have the freedom and self-awareness to think about different theories, evaluate evidence, and make a choice as to which is right or wrong. They just have to say whatever they have to say. And that's why the irony is that a naturalist would promote naturalism and try to tell people it's true. You should believe that and not supernaturalism. The answer is, if naturalism is true, so that your brain is just working on the laws of physics, then you have no reason to believe naturalism is true. It's just the laws of physics requiring you to say that. Which is just to say, if naturalism is true, there's no reason to say that naturalism is true. You're just forced to say that, just like I'm forced by the laws of physics to say the opposite. Unbelievers cannot even account for why we argue with each other then, can they? On their assumptions, there's no argument because there's no freedom to choose the truth over against error. There's just the laws of physics governing my brain to say and do whatever it does.
That is it.
And you can just drop the mic right there. So yeah, next week maybe a wingnut will call in and play that.
Well, you can't call in now. I mean, if you call in, he wins.
If you call in, he wins. Yep.
That's very grown up of him. Hey, you called in.
Tim, any atheist who argues with me has lost the debate because it's me they're arguing against.
Well, they have to call in. I mean, if anybody ever came in on our show, like showed up, everybody who ever debated Matt Slick, anybody who came in for Slick answers, well, Matt won because they showed up.
Hundreds of atheists owned over the last 3 years.
He wins. Well, winning.
We could win pretty soon because I got some really, really cool stuff as far as call in and video in and all this other stuff that I'm setting up in the webcast control room.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up. Sorry about the volume there on the end there. That just maxed everybody out on the recording because I had Bonson turned way up because his volume was low, and then John came in. Anyway, if you appreciate what we're doing here, if you're still listening, you probably appreciate what we're doing, which is very few people. So if you'd consider supporting us, that would be grand. Go to BibleThumpingWingnut.com, click on support our ministry. And if you become a Patreon supporter, send me your address within the United States of America. I will send you a book called Why We're Protestant and a Bible Thumping Wingnut t-shirt, $5 or more on Patreon. And I will send that out to you immediately. And there's other ways to give also. So also check out all the other podcasts, BibleThumpingWingnut.com. Feedback at BibleThumpingWingnut@gmail.com. Until next week, take care. I'll see you later. Were you, John, saying something? Who's saying something? Nothing?
Wasn't me. I'm trying to.
All right. See ya.